Good morning, everyone. How is everyone this morning? Nice to see everyone's looking fresh and awake. My name is Lena Latafat. I'm a reporter and anchor with CP24, Toronto's breaking news, and I have the privilege of telling stories every single day. I'm also privileged to have today off and to be a part of this incredible event. I'm so excited for the powerful conversations I know will be taking place today. Can everybody hear me okay, by the way? This isn't too loud? All good? Okay, great. And of course, welcome to the first annual Canada-India Foundation Women Entrepreneurs Conference and Workshop. The purpose of today's conference is to create a friendly, non-judgmental platform for women entrepreneurs, both established and starting, to understand the ecosystem of women enterprise and the opportunities available through official agencies and through shared experiences. I'm personally so excited to hear from all of the incredible women that are here today, and of course all of the men that are joining us this morning as well. Honorable Mary Ng, Canada's Minister for Small Business and Export Promotion, will deliver the keynote address this morning, I should say. Thank you so much for being here. Lovely to see you. And among some of the other speakers are His Worship Patrick Brown, the Mayor of Brampton, who will be joining us a little bit later on as well. Very excited to have him on board. So the program consists of 3 panel discussions. The first, startup, scale up, and accessing new markets. The second, inspiring case studies of women-operated companies. And the last, innovative entrepreneurs, turning ideas into business. In addition, we also have Business Development Bank of Canada and Export Development Canada provide insights into raising finances and exploring global markets. Dr. YWCA of the Diversity Institute at the Ryerson University will inform us about the new Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. There'll be 2 coffee breaks, don't worry, and there will of course be a lunch break during the day as well. So let's commence the program by inviting Honorable Mary Ng to deliver the keynote address. I do want to say a little bit before I invite you on the stage, because of course you deserve a very warm welcome. So Minister was first elected the Member of Parliament for Markham Thornhill in April 2017. She was appointed Minister of Small Business and Export Promotion back in July 2018. Minister Ng helps Canadian businesses start up, scale up, and access new markets. Of course, so important. She's also leading the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy, which seeks to double the number of women entrepreneurs by 2025. That is an incredible initiative, and for that, of course, we want to say thank you. Throughout her 20 years of public service, she's been a devoted community leader and an advocate with a proven track record of results in the areas of public policy, job creation, entrepreneurship, and scale. Please join me in welcoming Minister Ng.
Well, thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. It's really wonderful to be here tonight. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm so pleased to be here at the inaugural first forum for women entrepreneurs hosted by the Canada-India Foundation. And it's extraordinary to see this come together. But before I begin my remarks officially, I just want to respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional territory of the peoples of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently the Mississaugas of the New Credit River. I want to begin by giving a wonderful warm welcome to the Canada-India Foundation. I think about just a couple of short months ago when I was speaking to Ramesh and other board members, and the idea, of course, was already in the works to plan today's workshop for women entrepreneurs. And it's so heartwarming because it's always rewarding when you start talking about a concept and then you see it come to life, and here it is, it's come to life, and I'm so pleased that the Business Development Bank, BDC, is supporting this initiative and that we are supporting it, so it's really, really wonderful. So thank you so much for your leadership in bringing together this great conference. The relationship between Canada and India is rooted in history, and it is strengthened by our economic collaboration, our cultural exchanges, and our people-to-people ties. With more than 1.2 million Canadians of Indian heritage, Canada has one of the largest per capita South Asian communities in the world. India is also the largest source of international students to Canadian universities and colleges, accounting for 172,000 students just this year alone. And to see South Asian Canadians standing up for their country and inspiring others to the same, you needn't look much further than my friends and cabinet colleagues, and indeed my caucus colleagues who are here today. We have Sonia Sidhu, who is here, MP Sidhu. We have MP Ramesh Sangha, who is here. Let's give him a hand. We will be joined shortly by MP Ruby Sahota, but alongside working together with the Prime Minister are also my friends and colleagues in Minister Navdeep Bains, Minister Harjit Sajjan, Minister Amarjit Sohi, and of course my very good friend, the predecessor on my file. She was the Minister of Small Business and Tourism, Minister Bardish Chaggar, who is the first woman who is a government house leader for the Parliament of Canada. She is my colleague and she is an extraordinary, proud South Asian. Our government knows that Canada thrives when we welcome the very best from around the world, because diversity of thought and talent in our workplaces drives innovation, attracts investment, and strengthens our communities. And because Canada's multiculturalism policy, South Asians and all immigrants, including myself, are able to flourish here in Canada. Our government is building a strong economy that works for and includes everyone. Together, since 2015, we have created over 1 million jobs, and our unemployment rate is at a historic low. We have lowered taxes for 9 million hardworking Canadians, and we have lifted 800,000 Canadians out of poverty, a third of that children. The middle class is growing, and life is more affordable today. When the economy is strong, our government believes that we must tackle the important social issues affecting Canadians. Issues like gender equality and the unequal representation of women in our economy. So did you know that 99% of Canadian businesses are small and medium-sized businesses? That is nearly 1.2 million businesses in Canada. They are the backbone of the Canadian economy, and yet only 12% are exporting today. And of all our small and medium-sized businesses in Canada, let me ask this question because I ask it in every room. What percentage do you think are female-led or female-owned? Throw out any number. Yell it out so we can hear. 16%, because some of these people I think heard me in other speeches. But it is. Sonia, did you tell them that? So it's 16%. So it's less than a quarter of our small and medium-sized businesses are women-owned or women-led. And of that, 11% of that 16% of the women-owned businesses are currently exporting. We could do better, but why is that? Well, women entrepreneurs still face unique barriers in accessing capital, getting access to supply chains, export programs compared to men. For example, I'll share a data point of research with you. Research tells us that pitches made by male entrepreneurs were funded 68% of the time. That very same pitch made by a woman entrepreneur, funded 32% of the time. Women business owners are nearly twice as likely to be rejected for financing due to insufficient collateral, and are more than twice as likely to be characterized as high risk due to the industries that they operate in. And women-owned businesses tend to be smaller and often in industries that are less likely to export. And yet, we know that women-owned businesses, women-led businesses help drive the Canadian economy, representing over $117 billion of economic activity, employing over 1.5 million Canadians. Studies show that if we worked to increase gender equality in our economy in Canada, we can add up to $150 billion of incremental GDP by 2026. That's just 7 years away. So, this is why our government has set a goal, and why I have the mandate from the Prime Minister to double the number of women-owned or women-led companies by 2025 through the first ever women's entrepreneurship strategy. We are doing this with a $2 billion investment, and you heard the earlier number. We can add up to $150 billion of incremental GDP, and we're making a $2 billion investment. So for those who are the numbers people in the room, I think that's actually a pretty good return on investment. But as part of the strategy, our government has invested in over 200 women-led companies across the country, investing in national ecosystems of support that's going to help women entrepreneurs and women-led companies from coast to coast to coast grow their business faster and to help women-owned businesses be successful. You're going to hear from Dr. Suki a little later, and you heard that one data point from me earlier. The honest truth is we don't have information. We don't have data that tells us about the barriers. We don't have data that tells us about what works and what's successful. So we've also invested in the Women's Knowledge Hub, which she will talk about a little later. And it's a $9 million investment that's led by Ryerson University with a national presence of universities across the country of researchers who are going to help us understand that data so that we as the government can make good evidence-based decisions from the good information and data that the Women's Knowledge Hub will be gathering and be working on. Our government has also set an aggressive goal of growing Canadian overseas exports by 50% of that same year. Because we see an opportunity, we don't rest on our laurels and we take actions so that we can deliver. So how are we doing this? In an effort to diversify our trade and in an effort to help grow our Canadian businesses, our government has concluded many trade agreements. The European Union and through CETA, we have a free trade agreement with the EU. We have a free trade agreement with many Pacific Rim nations, countries like Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, Australia, New Zealand, just to name a few. That is a free trade agreement through the CPTPP that we have ratified through Parliament at record speed. Of course, we have negotiated the new NAFTA. I don't remember the acronym, which is why I call it the new NAFTA. I think it's actually CUSMA, but I might get that wrong. New NAFTA, or the North American Free Trade Agreement that it's known. So we've just renegotiated that over the weekend. The steel and aluminum tariffs have been fully lifted, so we're looking forward to the support to ratify the newly negotiated North American Free Trade Agreement. Canada is also the only G7 country that has a free trade agreement with all other G7 countries. We also have, in addition to those multilateral trade agreements that I just talked about, bilateral agreements with countries like Israel, South Korea, Chile. We've also most recently had very productive discussions with ASEAN countries and with South American countries. And during the Prime Minister's trip to India in February 2018, our Prime Minister Trudeau, helped to facilitate two-way trade agreements and investment deals totaling $1 billion. We know that these free trade agreements are important. But when we talk often about the free trade agreements, people say, why do they matter at all? Well, there isn't a company that I have met yet that does not like one thing: customers. These trade agreements gives Canadian companies, women, entrepreneurs, women-led companies, preferential access to those marketplaces around the world. And what does it mean in terms of customer terms? It's 1.5 billion customers in the international marketplace that we have access to. That is what we want to help our companies grow and to scale and to access those new markets. And speaking of scale up, in the back of the room, Dr. Sheldon Levy is back there, who is my scale-up advisor, and for many of those in the room, Dr. Levy has done quite a bit of work between India and Canada, having created one of the very first bridges, I call bridges between Canada and India, through a incubator program that creates a bridge for Canadian companies going to India and India companies wanting to land in Canada. So welcome, Sheldon, to the room here as well. We know that Indian companies are interested in Canadian agri-foods, in clean tech, in digital expertise. With 66 new commercial contracts and agreements that will lead to nearly 6,000 jobs for Canadians, and with 10 billion in two-way trade between Canada and India, the opportunities for economic growth between our two countries are substantial, and our government remains committed to strengthening this economic collaboration. Through our various negotiations, including the trade agreements I just talked about, Canadian businesses have access to 62% of the global economy in 51 countries, and as I said, 1.5 billion customers. I regularly tell my cabinet colleagues and the Prime Minister, we can open up trade with the entire new galaxy off of the planet Earth, but it doesn't mean that Canadian SMEs are going to feel any more comfortable with exporting. We already have access to 62% of the world's economy, to over 50 countries, and yet when I started, I said only 12% of our Canadian SMEs are exporting, and of that 12%, they are exporting into, about 70% is exporting into the US. So there's a real opportunity to diversify and to grow our Canadian enterprises into the world economy. But our SMEs need to feel comfortable exporting. We can and we must help them, because they ask questions about, how do I start? What are the rules? How do I get into a certain market? I don't know which market to get into. So this is why our government is investing in supporting existing exporters and creating new exporters. Our government is committed to helping small businesses and women entrepreneurs to get exporting with Export 101. It's a training module offered by EDC, who you're going to hear from later, to learn how to export. EDC also has a high-risk direct lending support program that they provide to our Canadian companies to help them on pursuing international opportunities. We have a program called Can Export. Can Export is a program that we have made over $100 million in investment in, and this program is to help our Canadian entrepreneurs fund a bit of their IP, connect some market research, or get some allowance so that they could travel internationally to attend a trade expo abroad. The BDC, who is here today and who is supporting today's conference, has a Canada Women in Technology program. It's one of the largest venture capital funds dedicated specifically to women-led technology programs. And the BDC, of course, I call it Canada's only entrepreneurial bank, is there to help our companies with access to capital, to starting up their business, or to growing their business. We've also invested in what I call Canada's best sales force around the world. Who in this room has worked with or knows of the Canada Trade Commission Service? Okay, it's a fraction of the room, but I'm going to tell you more about them. So they operate in 161 countries around the world. I call them Canada's global sales force, and the reason I call them that is we have just added through budget 2019, as well as through our fall economic statement, additional investment to increase the capability and the capacity of the Canadian Trade Commission Service in key areas around the world, but also in Canada. This is to help Canadian entrepreneurs prepare and get ready to export. It is also to hold your hand in market. We have great Canadian trade commissioners operating in India. We have great Canadian trade commissioners operating in Asia. And like I said, in 161 countries around the world, and their job is to help you navigate and help you with in-country support when you begin your journey of exporting into the global marketplace. We have financing and insurance solutions for women-owned businesses that are exporting or looking to export. and we have support and services through the Business Women in International Trade program. We've also made investments, a $10 million investment in the Trade Accelerator program through our local chambers of commerces and our boards of trades, and this is to help thousands of small and medium-sized business to get ready and to start exporting. And we have made historic investments in trade corridors and infrastructure to make sure that as Canadian products are leaving the country, that our infrastructure and our trade corridors is we're going to maximize that capability to increase the flow of goods out of Canada into the world marketplace. So all of these actions build on a record of support that we are providing for Canadian small businesses in Canada. I'll share a few with you. I often say, what's my job? It's to help companies start up, scale up, access new markets, but it's also to create an environment so that it's easy and more competitive for small businesses to operate in Canada. So reducing the small business tax to 9%, giving Canada one of the lowest tax rates in the world. Working with credit card companies so that they lower their fees that they charge businesses when your customers are buying your products. We have removed 450 administrative burdens and cutting red tape that gets in the way of businesses doing business. And we've made some changes to help create more incentives for businesses to make investments in their companies. So removing the cap on SR&ED tax credits and creating the accelerated capital cost allowance so that you can write off either all or a greater share of the capital investments that you make in your business in the year that you make it. So this is about helping your business grow, creating incentives for you to invest in your business, but ultimately helping you be more successful, because when you are successful, we know that you're going to be able to create great jobs, more jobs here in Canada, and it benefits the Canadian economy. So we know that small and medium-sized businesses are the backbone of the Canadian economy, and when you work best, you work for everyone. Business owners like you in the room and those across Canada are the job generators. You're the innovators, you're the leaders of industry, and your success is absolutely linked to the success of all Canadians. And we look forward to continuing to work hard with all of you. And to all of the women in the room, I know that when presented with an opportunity to move the needle or change the narrative, we all often think of the obstacles first. We're like that, right? We think, oh, here are all the problems. Because I know that when I was presented with the opportunity to run for public office, I came up with my own list of the reasons why I couldn't do it. But in order to create the kind of change we need, our voices need to be heard. We need to make a place for ourselves and for other women, and we need to make that place and that space for those voices at the decision-making table, whether it's the classroom, to the boardroom, in politics, around the cabinet table. We need women to get involved. I know that I absolutely am going to reach that goal that the Prime Minister and frankly that Canadians have given to me. We are going to double the number of female entrepreneurs by 2025, and we are going to add those jobs to the Canadian economy, and we are going to grow and add $150 billion of incremental GDP to Canadians' economy, because we are going to grow jobs. So ladies, take your place in Canada's national economy, because you belong there, and guess what? I got your back.
Minister Ng, thank you so much for that. So lovely to hear your perspective. We have an incredible lineup of speakers today. Next, I want to call up Member of Parliament Sonia Sidhu. Please join me in welcoming her.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for giving the opportunity. I was not on the speaking list, but I was so impressed from our Minister Mary Ng. She's working very hard. Let's give a big round of applause to her. And next round of applause, I really want to give Canada India Foundation. Thank you for supporting the women's. They know when women flourish, society flourish. When society flourish, country flourish. Minister told us what are the barriers and what is the opportunity out there. By 2025, we have to double the numbers with women's. And 3 MPs and 4th one, Mr. Sangha, don't feel offended. We 3 women's and 4 MPs were here. And then I'm in the BDC building in downtown. So anytime you need my help, I'm always there. Let's work together and make our country flourish. Thank you very much, Canada-India Foundation. I'm looking forward to see you at your next panel. Thank you very much for doing that. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Let's work together.
Okay, Sonia, thank you so much for that. It is now time for us to start with our panel discussions this morning. So the subject for the first is Startup, Scale-Up, and Accessing New Markets. Please join me in welcoming the moderator of the discussion, Sunita Vyas, a member of the Board of Governors, Canada-India Foundation, and the CEO of Academy of Learning. Welcome, Sunita. And the panelists for this are Minister Ng, Kiran Hirpara of Unique Broadband System Limited, a Technorat, and Maya Rao of YWCA. Please give them a warm welcome.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. So ladies, thank you for taking time out from your busy schedule to be at the Women's Entrepreneur Workshop hosted by Canada-India Foundation. Minister Ng, we are extremely grateful for the inspiring speech that you gave us. So I'm sure before, at the end of this 2-day workshop, we'll be able to get a lot more help. The women in the audience will hear a lot more about the resources that they have at hand if they choose to take the route. So in the next 50 minutes or so, we will be discussing 2 different sides of the same coin. I think this is, okay. So as you said that there is a huge gap, there are 2 different sides of the coin. When I say that, the first side is the visible minority. So you find women that want to be entrepreneurs would rather take a step back and not be an entrepreneur, but would rather go out and get a job. Now they know when they're going out to get a job, they might not be able to get a job that matches their qualifications or their education. So that's one side of the coin. The second side is that Canada, which is reported to be the #1 in the world when it comes to women creating and running their own businesses. So Minister Ng, this question is to you. What do you have to say about these 2 conflicting issues?
Yeah, you know, it certainly is. How about this? Oh, perfect. Okay. You heard me say a little earlier that that only 16% of our businesses in Canada are small and medium-sized businesses are women-owned or women-led, and that's precisely why we have the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy. And part of this, and you know, I've been traveling across the country, meeting many businesses, small and medium-sized businesses, and a lot of women entrepreneurs and a lot of women-led businesses. And what they have shared with me are the range of barriers that exist for them. So those barriers are very real, and whether it is not being able to access the supports or the resources that are needed to make that leap into entrepreneurship, to just a range of barriers. I mean, a range of system-type barriers that exist for women. So there's no question that that the barriers are there. But I guess what I would say is that that understanding and knowing that there are barriers there, knowing that the numbers are as low as they are, but also knowing that studies tell us the opportunity that exists for Canada and for economic growth just simply by women's economic empowerment into the economy. My preference is let's focus on how we can work together to create an environment with supports and investments so that we are enabling our women entrepreneurs, our women business leaders, or those who wish to be entrepreneurs to start their business, or those who already have their businesses. Let's help them with growing their businesses. What is it that's missing right now that we could do as government to create the right environment, the right supports, the right investment supports to help female entrepreneurs. So I talked about a number of those things. And I think maybe what I'll do is focus on, sort of the one, which I think is going to start taking root. We've made an investment as part of the women's entrepreneurship strategy. One of the investments we have made is in a women's ecosystem. And I hear this a lot from women, which is, where do I start? And even if I'm starting, how do I actually then take my business to the next level? So the ecosystems of support, which we are now putting out into different parts of the country, in the regions, but also nationally, helps us build on the existing work that already is taking place to help all entrepreneurs, but now with a focus to make sure that we are leveling that playing field for women so that they can get access to capital, they can get access to advice, they may get access to the networks of, the networks into the supply chains that they may not otherwise have had the opportunity to have access. So that's, that's one example of many, many many other initiatives that we are working on, but maybe I'll stop there. It's, I guess to sum it up, it is, yes, there are barriers, yes, there are challenges, but let's focus on the future and let's figure out what we need to do so that we can enable participation, growth, because the business case is there and it's also the right thing to do.
Thank you. So I'm going to jump to the next question. Maya, as you're the CEO of YWCA, and our minister is spearheading the Women's Entrepreneur Strategy. So I believe as the CEO of YWCA, you are constantly surrounded by these young talent, young achievers. So in your expertise, and based on the new entrepreneur strategy and the $1 billion of funds that the government has available to these female entrepreneurs, what would be your three-step guide to women who want to start up their own business?
So in terms of the three-step guide, and thank you, Minister Ng, for your comments and also for your investments in our entrepreneurship training in Toronto. Really, there's sort of three things, I think, to look at the data and the feasibility case for your business. So for example, we've had women leaving abusive relationships who have come up with some really interesting and creative ways. We had one woman who actually went to the US Treasury on a tour and realized that they were giving away the shredded American dollars, and she had studied fashion design back home. So she actually developed her own series of coats using recycled American dollars. And started her own online business on Etsy. I mean, so when we're talking about innovation and resilience, I think absolutely women, and like the women in this audience, and also with our minister who's in a cabinet of 50%, with 50% women, these are the kinds of sort of supports and ideas we can exchange. I think the second piece is around supports and networking, and we've heard a lot about that this morning. And that's something we really like to drive and nurture and support at YWCA. So an event very much like this, the amount of community support and the networking that was happening before we got started this morning, and as we'll work and get to know each other over the next 2 days. One of the things that we were hearing in our research when we work with women entrepreneurs, and when you look at the data, is the things that are holding us back as newcomer women and visible minority women are also the things that are holding us back in life. So the isolation, the lack of access. I think the access to supports and networks are very, very important. One of the things we found when we actually looked at tax filer data of entrepreneurs in the Toronto and 905 area is women were starting their businesses, but when we started to speak to entrepreneurs, a lot of times, for example, even within their own families, they were getting pressure. So not recognizing all of the unpaid labor and work that we do at home. So, for example, mother's business is going well, but all of a sudden the husband or their mother-in-law is getting annoyed around her schedule, are getting annoyed that she's not available for certain commitments. So how we can support each other, I think, is really, really key. That's one of the reasons why we've started looking at access to childcare, actually, as a solution as to how we can support women entrepreneurs. So there's the supports, and then I think the third piece is around technical skills and how do we provide supports around upskilling in the workplace. I know a lot of you are busy entrepreneurs. You probably have staff that you need, who need just a certain skill set. So we're working with a number of companies and with Dr. Sukiye, who's going to be speaking later, around what are some of the just-in-time learning and training tools we can offer online. So for example, at YWCA, we do a lot of life coaching and have a training program. So for example, what are some certain modules we could give if you have certain employees who, for example, need to pick up certain soft skills. For us, those are really the three major themes that we're hearing when we're working with our women entrepreneurs across the country. And I think it's spaces like this and opportunities like today and tomorrow that are really key in fostering that growth and really moving the needle on that 16% number that we've been hearing about from the beginning.
Thank you. So taking a cue from what you just said, we've talked about the challenges. If I move towards survival, my question would be to Kiran. So you've been in a leadership role, and you've been in a leadership role which is dominated you've been in a leadership role which is mostly dominated by male in the science and technology field. What would you say would be your recipe to success? How do you stay on top, and how do you survive it all as being a woman leader?
Thanks, Anita, for wonderful question. And good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm a proud person working since 30 years in the male-dominated society and male-dominated industries. I work with space and defense for 30 years, and more or less this industry is dominated by the male. And we all know that getting recognitions or getting respect as a woman entrepreneur or woman leader is a little bit of struggling. I will not say it's difficult, but a little bit of struggling. Still, the gender imparity exists. So, I will throw some lights to break these invisible barriers, which Mr. Amadi also says about a lot of barriers which we have, we don't know how to. And I think I must have to say this is a great initiative by Canada, India.
No, it's on. The green light is on.
Is it okay now? Okay, very good. Okay, so I would like to congratulate first Canada India Foundations to create the great topic which really will help every woman here who wants to pursue their business as an entrepreneur to break the invisible barriers. I would definitely say that first things which I would like to request every woman here, don't think yourself as just a woman. You are a woman entrepreneur, woman business person, a lot of doctors, engineers, you might be having some another identity. So don't limit yourself just by calling as I am a woman and working as an entrepreneur and having a difficulty. So you have to balance. A lot of women might have think here that to get succeed, they have to adopt the main attitude. It's not necessary. You have to build your own profile with your own quality and with your own expertise. So definitely these days, of course, there is a B2B and B2C world, we all know. But as Minister says in her speech that this is a P2P world and we have to connect people to people. And to make, we all social media, this and that, we have to make our own profile such a strong that you will create your supporting network very good into this male dominating society and which will never stop you to succeed. So my first and foremost advice is being a woman, take a pride, build your profile with your quality, your expertise, and make a public profile which will help you to grow. I also want to say that when you are working as an entrepreneur, as a leader, or any industries, focus on the small activities happening around you in your workplace to achieve your goal. Eventually, the small connected step will take climbers to the top. So you have to note, you don't have to get away from the any things which you think, oh, being a woman, I cannot do that. This is the only main work. No, not at all. So don't get rid of any kind of a fear of failure, and you have to focus on the small activities. Another things which I would like to request every woman, because a lot of women here might have gone through a lot of changes in terms of layoff, in terms of restructuring, but never give up to your success, because there is a possibility that with your own quality you will flourish wherever you plant yourself. So please be ready for the changes. And another things which I would like to say, always open for the feedback. As a woman, you might be working anywhere, you will find the persons who will say, this is the advice to you, this is our feedback to you, if you do this way, it will be better. Open for the feedback. Take whatever is good for you. Feedback is like a medicine. Once it will feel bad, but once you take it, it will cure. So always open for the feedback, open for the discussion, never shy. If you want to go for any kind of help, go for that. Of course, this is a male-dominating society, but that doesn't mean that it will stop you. So be open for your all the discussions and all the feedbacks. Give the feedback, take the feedback, build your network, build your profile. At the end, I want to say, define your success with your own terms and achieve with your own rules, and build your life what you want to be proud of. You know, never live under the shadow of any judgment. People will guide you, people will maybe discourage you, but just give your own thoughts and bring your own ideas with your expertise. And that's what I want to say for this, that the male-dominated society will never stop you. This is my personal experience, and I think if you have that self-confidence in you, you will definitely flourish.
I do completely agree, because as an entrepreneur myself, when I set myself up for doing things, I've never thought of it that I'm a woman, it's going to be difficult, and this is a male-dominated society. You know, you just do things as a human being, as a person, you go out and do what you have to do. So I completely agree with that we have to stop believing that we're different, you know. I mean, the only difference that we can believe in is that we're better. Right. So that's one thing that we should always be looking out at. So I do know that Minister Ng has to leave early. So I'm going to combine my next two questions in one. So this question is going to be extremely long. Okay. So we've talked about percentages. We've talked about the 39% of women who are self-employed. But we've not talked about the 60% of the women who are self-employed. 60% from these are in businesses that are not incorporated or are in a business that has no employees at all. So this really, this is alarming actually, because these women are not taking any advantages of the taxation systems that we have. They're not looking at reinvestment, and like I was talking to Maya earlier, we've talked about these women who are using their credit cards to become their credit lines for business. So it's a huge disparity, I would say. And you've talked about how men are getting more loans than women are. This and next question would have been that the 16% of SME that are women-owned, only 10% of these women are in a high-grown revenue business, and 8% are in your export promotion. So at the forefront of being the Minister for Small, Medium Businesses and Export Promotion, what is your take on both these numbers and stats?
Well, can I borrow yours?
Maybe this one?
No problem. There we go. Well, you know what, I guess I'll answer it a little similar to the way that I answered the other one, which is, the numbers as they are what they are, and what we need to look at is into the future and where they need to be. So where they need to be is a whole lot better than where they are right now. And making sure that women have access to the range of both knowledge and services and supports is something that we are committed to doing as a federal government, but also working with, with provincial partners and municipal partners and partners like the chambers of commerce's, boards of trades and so forth. But it is, I guess I'm describing sort of that ecosystem again, but what I would say is I would draw people, as I do all the small and medium-sized businesses around the country, to one site, because small businesses, in particular those that are, even micro businesses, because less than 10 employees is micro businesses, we've tried to create a one-window portal for small businesses to get the information that they need so that they have, so that it's easy for them to access. I mean, when you think about the federal government, we're very big. And how, and my challenge is to be sure that what I am doing as the minister responsible for small business is to be our Canadian small businesses and our entrepreneurs' loudest voice, or not loudest, but the strongest voice, and an advocate for your success around the cabinet table and in government. Innovate. So I'm going to point you to one portal that we created, Minister Baines and I, as part of our department. It's called inauguration.canada.ca. I would encourage people to go through there because it's our effort to be able to create a single door that you can go into. It'll ask you about 10 to 12 questions, and every entrepreneur is different, every business is different. Some people are really at that very beginning. Some are struggling to grow. Others are struggling to find other supports, and others are at a point of growth and they want to kind of hit that next surge, right? So every entrepreneur is different, every business is different. But we also know that small businesses don't have that flexibility like larger businesses might, where you can sort of say to someone on staff, please look at this new market opportunity for me, or please look to see what kind of grant programs or funding programs or supports or whatever it might be that might be out there to help my business. Small businesses don't have that opportunity. I mean, I grew up in a small business, I understand, and working with a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of small businesses, I understand how time is absolutely of the essence and just so tight. And if you're a woman entrepreneur, you also have other responsibilities, right? I mean, you talked about, the need for caregiving, the need for, for domestic duties at home. I'll just touch about that in a little, in a second, but I just want to kind of close the point, which is innovation.canada.ca is our attempt to give you a one-window access, because what I would like us to be always for our small and medium-sized businesses in this country, I want you to have no wrong door. I want you to come into whatever door you might come into at the federal government, and that there's no wrong door, that you are going to be put to where you need to be to get the information that you need, or the support or the resources that are available out there, so that you can help, so that it'll help you make the decisions you need as female entrepreneurs who are would-be entrepreneurs. So I just want to say that, that is what we are, that's what we've done. We will continue to improve upon it because, with these programs and, and government being sort of large, we need to work very hard to be sure that what we are putting in place is very responsive, particularly to small businesses, particularly to female entrepreneurs, newcomer entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs that are, that may be challenged with, a range of issues of just starting new in the country. And just a point about the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy. While we have made a $2 billion investment for a range of supports to help double the number of female entrepreneurs, I will say that the investment alone is not going to do it. That investment on its own is not going to help us be successful. What we have done is we have also added 40,000 affordable childcare spaces. We have also changed parental leave rules so that the sharing of domestic labor in a household is one that can be shared with your partner. We have made, introduced the Canada Child Benefit. That helps families. When you help families and you help with a little bit more affordability for your family, you're going to help the woman, and you're going to help the woman be successful. We have opened up, we've created a requirement for federally regulated boards to disclose their diversity makeup, but also their gender makeup of their boards and of their senior management, so that we are, you know, I often say you need to see it to be it, right? I mean, so you're seeing greater representation, and when you see it, you believe that it is absolutely possible. So, you know, it isn't just about the financial investment. It is also the social policies that our government has put in place very deliberately to complement this investment strategy. So not only do you have the investment programs to help women entrepreneurs, but we've created the right conditions to help women be successful. So childcare is one, parental leave is another, Canada Child Benefit is a third, an international feminist policy, a policy that addresses domestic violence at home is the other, and there are probably others that I'm forgetting, but those would be the very top that I would say are the social policies that we have put in place, because they are actually also a necessary prerequisite in order to enable our women entrepreneurs to be successful. And I see AJ over there sort of waving his hands up and down.
Taking a cue from what the minister said right now, Maya, so you two are at the helm of these things. Now, there are so many policies and there are so many grants and there is so much access to women entrepreneurs. How, in your capacity at the YWCA, are you able to connect these women to these, I would say, policies or grants, or take them to how they can access all the stuff that the Minister Ng said, and how do they get out of looking beyond their hobby businesses, which is a very, very important part of the discussion, because when we talk about women entrepreneurs, we talk about women not incorporating their business. I think most of them are working from home, and they need to take the next step. So if we have all this information available to us, we have access to this, how are you connecting the people to these accesses?
So it looks like a range of supports, and for those of you who are interested, I have some of that information with me here today for after break. I think the mentoring is certainly very important. At a number of locations, we actually have small business coaches who have a background in running their own business in the past. So really sort of sitting down with a woman, being able to look at what they're doing right now, what they would like to do, and for example, moving them through the stages of having a strong business development plan. Certainly, unfortunately, access to credit, as we all know, is very, very challenging. And we do like to work with women to ensure that they're not entirely relying on their credit card or racking up credit card debt. So we have partnered with a number of institutions to start to look at small loans and small lending loans with low interest, very similar to what we have back home, for example, with the Grameen Bank. So there's a number of strategies. We've also, at the YWCA, we start looking at our community needs regionally and geographically, and looking at the numbers and seeing what kind of business models would work. So for example, in Banff, I don't know if anybody here has ever been to Banff. It's absolutely beautiful. So they've actually started their own hotels. So we have a social enterprise hotel, and any of the profits developed in our hotels in Montreal, Banff, and Vancouver actually go back into some of the kinds of coaching programs that we're talking about today. And in Banff, the reason why I mentioned them is they actually worked with local women entrepreneurs, the government, the banks, and Fairmont Hotels. The hospitality tourism industry is obviously one of the large economic engines in Banff, Alberta. And they've actually developed a for-profit childcare model called Puzzles, i.e. looking at the puzzle of figuring out our childcare as working women. So they actually do extended hours from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And so that's been a way that we've actually partnered with local businesses and small businesses for people to be able to attract local talent, retain employees, and actually have sort of that access to childcare piece worked out. So it's a real range, and I think one of the things I'm interested in today is also hearing from you, other entrepreneurs, around what other kinds of things we should be doing. So for example, we've also done research and worked with UN Women to talk about how to invest in women in innovation and SEMEs across on a global stage. So I think there's always more to do. And again, if it's small businesses who are actually creating jobs, that's a real place where when we talk about supporting gender equity, we see that as part of the foundation.
That's so true. There is a lot of work that needs to be done, but we've come a long way as well. So just to wrap up the panel discussion, because I know the minister has to leave, I'd like to say to all the women in the audience that we should be proud that we are part of the $148 billion of revenue that we generate in Canada. So we are part of that $148 billion. We are also part of the 1.5 million people that we employ every year. So we definitely need a pat on our back. I think we need to give women the education and the expertise to tackle the entrepreneurial world. I'm hoping today has been a step in the right direction. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out today from your busy schedule and working with us through the Canada India Foundation for the workshop. Thank you so much.
Thank you all for that insightful conversation. Canada India Foundation would like to now present you with a little token of their appreciation. Following that, we'd also invite all the women here today up on stage to take a photo. If everyone, after we've presented the plaques, could just make their way to the stage for a photo. Thanks, guys. Whoever's got the plaques, if you could just make your way to the stage.
Check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. I knew from the first time I